And
Welcome to the Sunshine State Book Festival. I am Marie Hugh Rogers, and I'm here to talk with you about my award winning novel, Trials by Fire. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I have loved stories all my life. Before I could read, my mother and grandmother would read stories to me. I didn't even think about where those stories came from. They were magical things that just came into existence like trees and flowers. When I was in third grade, my teacher read Little House in the Big Woods to the class. She told us that the author, Laura Ingalls Wilder, was a real person who wrote books about her childhood. That's when I realized that stories didn't just magically pop out of nowhere, they were written by actual people, and that little girls could grow up to be famous authors. It's taken me a long time to get there. I began writing stories when I was in junior high school. Through the years, I made sporadic attempts to get them published, but never successfully, but I never gave up. Finally, when I retired, I sat down and wrote my first book length project, the first draft of what is now Trials by Fire. I rewrote that book many times and tried to get an agent or publisher. Finally, I gave up on that and self published the novel. At the time, the title was Fern. Readers liked it, but I gave away more books than I sold. In the meantime, I wrote another novel. By then, I'd heard about the Writers Alliance of Gainesville, so I joined a writing pod, a fiction pod. When I submitted my first chapter to the pod, I was in for a rude awakening. They told me it wasn't very good. One pod member wrote in her comments, "I bought this book for 25 cents at a yard sale. After I read the first chapter, I was so mad about wasting my money, I threw the book across the room." Yikes. But their criticism was meant kindly, and I didn't give up. I learned that writing fiction is quite different from the writing I'd done in my job. So I had to learn to write all over again. I am deeply indebted to my fellow writers who helped me get to where I am today. I worked on that book for some time before setting it aside. My method is to complete a book, then put it on the back burner and go back to it later with fresh eyes. I will return to that one soon, rewrite it, and it will see publication. I think you'll enjoy it. Meanwhile, I went back and reread Fern. I thought, what a good story, but what lousy writing. So I not only rewrote the book, I totally recrafted it and gave it a new title. You can do things like that when you self publish. Because the main character is a teenage girl, I was advised to market it as a young adult book. One problem was that it was way too long. I couldn't figure out how to reduce the word count without sacrificing important elements of the story. So I followed additional advice to split it into two books. Trials by Fire is the first installment, and I'm working on getting the second one ready for publication. My readers have ranged in age from 10 to 89, male and female, and everyone has told me they love it. This spring, I entered the book in the Royal Palm Literary Awards contest. In July, I received an email saying my book was a semifinalist. A few weeks later, another email told me it was a finalist. Wow! I had to wait 3 more months to find out if I won anything. The Florida Writers Association convention was online in 2020, as was everything else. On October 17th, I tuned in and waited anxiously for the young adult category to be announced. Finally, here it was. They announced the Bronze Award. Trials by Fire by Marie Q. Rogers. All my hard work had paid off, and now I can bill myself as an award-winning author. Here's my trophy. I'm so proud. Enough about me. Let's turn to my book. Our heroine, Fern, is a teenage girl from St. Augustine. Let me read from the back cover. She was alive. She was safe. But where? And at what cost? Trapped in a house fire, Fern's only means of escape is by a paranormal gift she never knew existed. Transported instantly from all she knew, family, home, friends, to a distant world from which she is unable to return. Her highly psychic rescuers lead a primitive lifestyle, hiding from an alien race that had once enslaved them. While dealing with homesickness and grief, Fern struggles with a new language, unusual customs, and unrequited love. Her efforts to fit in often fall short. Despite this, she becomes a contributing member of the community. In the end, it is her vigilance that saves the lives of her new people. Trials by Fire is a coming-of-age story with elements of science fiction and paranormal fiction. One reader even described it as a suspense novel. Some of my readers said they don't normally like science fiction, but they liked this book. Go to my Amazon page and click on the book cover. There you can read the first 42 pages for free. Now I'll read a few excerpts from the book. Some background information. The people on this world practice plural marriage. In her new family, Fern has 2 mothers, 2 fathers, and 5 siblings. Only 2 speak English. Her sister Tira and their father Taran. Also, this planet has 2 moons. This is from a chapter titled The Feast of the 2 Moons. Fern watched the villagers play games and sports, wishing she could join them. By their gestures and the friendly tone of their words, she knew she was invited, but by merely observing, she couldn't figure out the rules and didn't want to ask Tira or bother Taran. One day she watched a foot race, and the next time the runners lined up, she joined them. She got off to a fast start, feeling the exhilaration of blood pumping through her muscles, her bare feet grasping the ground, pulling her ahead of the pack. Then an older girl passed her, looked back, and shouted. Was she gloating? Why? Stung to the quick, Fern stopped running and stepped out of the way of the runners, her limbs trembling with disappointment. Tira followed her. Why did you stop running? She yelled at me. She was only encouraging you. She said to run faster and catch up with her. Why would she say that? Tira put her hands on her hips. The point of a race is for everyone to get better, not necessarily to come in first. Fern tried to hide her tears. These people were so hard to understand. She just didn't fit in. After this, she avoided games entirely. On the evening of the full moons, everyone donned their best tunics and ornaments. As the small moon chased the larger into the sky, the people gathered on the samig with their musical instruments. The moons gave so much light, no fire was needed. A musician struck a chord, and music began. Fern recognized the tune, an Irish jig. She thought about her father. His parents had told him little about their ancestral homeland. Attempting to discover his roots, he had learned Irish dances and taught them to his daughters. Fern jumped to her feet and joined the other dancers. They observed her movements and tried to copy them. The pace of the jig caused many missteps and much laughter. Fern saw a woman throw up her hands, giggling. Narville tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Please show us." Fern waved to the musicians to slow their tempo, then demonstrated the steps until the others caught on. After this, dancing came easy for Fern. Seeing others struggle with new steps, she no longer felt embarrassed when her feet tangled. She danced the night away, every couple's dance with a different boy. At midnight, the activity ceased. All eyes watched the small moon move across the face of the larger one, making perfect concentric circles. Taryn said, "This is an extremely rare event. Usually the eclipse is not so perfect. It's as though the moons are paying tribute to you for joining us in our world." Elation filled Fern's entire being. She could neither move nor speak. As she gazed up at those perfect circles, she felt rooted in place, standing in the very center of the universe. She let gratitude pour from her for the loving care of her new family and the embrace of the entire community. Once the small moon separated from the larger one and went on its way, music and dancing resumed and continued until dawn. I hope you enjoyed this. Please visit my website, marieqrogers.com. On my blog, I post creative nonfiction on a variety of topics, and you can read my published short stories there. Now that I think about it, my childhood notion that stories are magical things was true after all. They are magical, born in our hearts and imaginations. Thank you for tuning in, and happy reading.